Though this is the season of giving, it can be triggering for people who don't have much to give or loved ones to share it with. This can cause someone to be envious of those who seem to have more. But in this case, what if you're the person that technically has more? Then what are you jealous of? Their happiness? Would this jealousy cause you to prey on their downfall? Or not even pray, go to a local voodoo priest to curse this happy-go-lucky person so they can be miserable just like you. Hey y'all, I'm BlaqueWitchYaya. Thank you so much for tuning into this video, and today I'm going to share a rather popular cautionary tale on how sending hexes out on a holiday can backfire. We already know sending out unprovoked hexes in general can backfire and it could get returned to sender tenfold. But sending hexes out during holiday season when it's meant for rest, recovery, appreciation to those around you and your spirits, working those spirits to go hex someone unprovoked, you'll see in the story. It's the 1800s and we are in New Orleans where Etan Duval lives. Now, Etan is a wealthy man, but that wasn't always the case. Etan grew up in modest circumstances. His family worked hard but struggled to make ends meet. He grew up seeing what it seemed like other people were making ends meet easily, but for some reason his parents seemed to always be caught in the rat race. So he made it his mission in life that when he got older, when he grew up, he was going to work hard and build his own wealth, which is exactly what he did. He became a merchant specializing in luxury goods, catering to the city's elites. So Etan's business was thriving, but his relentlessness, pursuit of success, that motivation, that hunger, it was good business-wise, but other people saw him as ruthless and self-centered. So despite his material success, Etan was never satisfied. He carried a deep resentment toward those who seemed to find happiness easily, especially if they had what he lacked, genuine love and community. So he would see people barely making ends meet and would be like, how in the world can they be smiling when they're poor? How are you excited to go to this party when you're poor? How can you love your wife and how can your wife love you when y'all are poor? Like, what's going on? He couldn't figure out how can someone be poor and be happy, because when he grew up poor, he was miserable. So he kind of felt like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you so satisfied? You're not even doing anything in life. Like, how can you be happy with that? And that was Etan's mindset for the longest. The math was a math thing when it came to him. He was like, how can you be happy when you lack financially? So people didn't like Etan. He was known to have a slick mouth and was condescending to people who weren't working as hard as him or doing as well as him. Now, to understand Etan a little more, all this bad energy did come from somewhere. Etan is a widower. His wife died years earlier during childbirth. Then his son died from an illness at a young age. So these tragedies hardened him, leaving him cold and emotionally distant and just flat out mean. He had a neighbor by the name of Paul Fontaine. Paul was born into a modest but loving family in New Orleans. His parents were artists who instilled in him the values of hard work, creativity, integrity, and generosity. So growing up in the vibrant Creole community, Paul learned the importance of community and the joy of helping others. Paul owned a general store that was popular in the neighborhood, but this store was more than just a place to go buy goods. It was a gathering spot where neighbors exchanged stories, celebrated successes, and supported one another. I don't know if you guys ever seen those stores where like you could go in there, buy a loaf of bread, but it's also a hangout spot. The older men get their coffee before and after work. It was like one of those stores. He wasn't the wealthiest merchant, but his reputation for fairness and generosity made his store a community hub. Now, Paul has a beautiful family. He's married to a woman by the name of Camille, and they often help neighbors in need, donated goods to the poor, and treated everyone with respect. Now, a nice neighbor is something we all hope for and appreciate. We prefer that over a nosy or a loud neighbor. But this pissed Etan off, and we'll find out why later. So with Paul being this good Samaritan on a day-to-day basis, you know for Christmas, he turns into Santa. Paul organized Christmas events like Christmas charity drives, food drives, clothes drives, sweater drives. And even in his home, he held festive parties from Thanksgiving all the way up to Christmas, always having friends and family over. He would invite the whole neighborhood. But one neighbor that did not show up year after year was of course Etan. He genuinely did not like Paul. On one hand, Etan, according to his definition of success, was more successful than Paul, so he couldn't understand how he could be so giving and happy when he didn't have much, and he didn't understand why people were always talking about him when he wasn't even that rich in the first place. He's like, how can this regular dude be the hometown hero? And then to top that off, people were always at his house, and during the holiday season, it just made it worse because everything was times 10. So as Christmas was approaching, Etan's jealousy started to boil over. So instead of just being jealous and envious on the inside in his own home in privacy, Etan decided to go to a well-known voodoo practitioner by the name of Madame Celeste. Madame Celeste is both feared and respected for her spiritual power, potent spells, and deep connection to her spirits. Her knowledge of rituals, herbs, and the spiritual world is like unmatched, and Etan knew she would be the perfect person to do the job, so he offered her a healthy payment in gold to cast a curse on Paul, ensuring his downfall before the new year. Now, initially, Madame Celeste refused, warning Etan that the spirits, particularly during the sacred Christmas season, were not to be manipulated for petty vengeance or self-gain. She told Etan Christmas is a holy time. To use the spirits for harm on such a night invites consequences beyond your understanding. So Etan takes in the information and he's like, all right, so what if I double the gold? So he wasn't listening. So Madame Celeste is like, double the gold? I mean, okay, it's worth a try. So she agreed. She performed the ritual on Christmas Eve. She drew intricate veves, which are like sacred symbols, in the dirt and made offerings to the spirits. So while she's doing her work, Etan is just sitting there watching her like a hawk, as if that's going to add in more intention and make the spell more powerful. So while Madame Celeste is doing her work, getting in her groove, channeling the spirits, some weird occurrences started to happen. Air grew unnaturally cold even for the winter time. The flames on the ritual candles flickered wildly, and an unearthly howl echoed through the swamp. Madame Celeste suddenly froze, her face turned pale, and her eyes were bloodshot red. And then all of a sudden, they both hear a calm voice that said, "This night is not for hatred, but for forgiveness. You, Etan, have brought darkness upon yourself." And before Madame Celeste could even warn him to stop talking or don't move, Etan mocked the spirits, laughing at their warning. "Oh no, I brought the darkness upon me, whatever." So Madame Celeste is looking at him like, why would you mock the spirits? So she hurried up and wrapped the ritual up. And Etan left feeling confident, like, yeah, old Paul about to go down. Even spirit had came through, so they know this spell is working. When he was going home, he passed by Paul's house. He felt even more confident because he knew Madame Celeste had sent something his way. So now Etan is home. He walked into his home and he felt the same cold air he had felt earlier during Madame Celeste's ritual. Then the lights on his Christmas tree began to flicker, making shadows on the wall, but the shadows seemed to leave the wall and began walking around the house. While all this is going on, Etan is standing still, just frozen, just like Madame Celeste was earlier. Etan finally snapped out of his trance. Everything around him seemed normal. He went upstairs to go to bed, but over the next few days, more weird occurrences would take place. His prized possessions in his home, like his vases, paintings, statues, whatever other fancy smancy stuff he had in his home, slowly began to disappear or break, like vases would just randomly fall off the shelf or tables. His business began to slow down during a time that should be busy because people are shopping around. When he went to sleep to seek some type of peace from the stress throughout the day, he would have vivid nightmares of ghostly figures condemning him, one being a very familiar face. As he continued to see the ghostly figures in his dreams, he was able to make out the small ghost face. And that face looked so familiar. The face of that ghost looked exactly like his son, which he found out it was his son. And what would seem to be a peaceful encounter that a lot of parents would wish for, to see their loved one, their child passed away, to see their face in a dream, Etan's son just stared at him with a displeased face. The next morning, Etan was desperate and terrified. He returned to Madame Celeste, begging her to reverse the curse because he seen his son's face and saw his son was pissed off and his little 2-3-year-old behind. He's like, if my son knew I did something wrong, I need to fix this. She explained that the spirits could not just simply be dismissed. Like, you can't send out a hex and be like, oops, sorry, my bad. They demanded a show of genuine repentance. So on Christmas morning, Etan humbled himself and knew exactly what he needed to do. He went next door to Paul Fontaine's home and flat out confessed his envy, every thought or feeling he ever had towards him. He just told Paul everything and asked for forgiveness. And Paul forgave him without any type of hesitation and invited him in for Christmas dinner. As dinner was over, Etan felt even more worse because he's like, wow, he didn't invite me in for dinner. His family's so nice. That was such a good time. I haven't been around people in so long. It was like a fulfilling feeling. So he's like, how in the world was I jealous of this man and he just brought me all this Christmas joy? Because he hasn't spent Christmas with anyone since his wife and son died. So it was a warm feeling to be around family again, even if it wasn't his own. That night, I guess the Grinch's heart grew 1 inch bigger. He decided that he was going to burn a candle in remembrance of his son and his wife, and as soon as he lit the candle, he finally felt a sense of peace he's been searching for since he sent out the curse. All of a sudden, the Christmas tree lights were brighter. The cold air was like the perfect temperature. He felt sleepy, like he could just ease off to sleep right there on the couch. It was like a weight has been lifted immediately. And then from there, he began to slowly flip his reputation in the community from being a bully, basically, to his true self. People began to warm up to him slowly but surely. He even helped out Paul with his donations and charity drives. Now, I do want to mention that I don't think this ritual would have worked even if he did it during a different season. Of course, with holiday season, it's really not going to work. Because from what's shared, Paul is an overall morally righteous person. So with as much as he put out, the spirits are going to protect him and reward him for his good character. So someone randomly just being jealous of him when he didn't do anything to anyone, your spirit is going to protect you from any outside negative sources, especially ones that's unprovoked. And the way Paul forgave him, Paul probably didn't even know that he felt that way, and it was a one-sided beef. I'm sure we all know about one-sided beef. So just some key takeaways from this story. Respect for the spiritual realm. The spirits, particularly during sacred times, must be approached with reverence and humility. This time of the year is meant for self-reflection, forgiveness, whether it's forgiving yourself or forgiving others, and just overall inner workings. Also, spirits are not your do boys where you could just sick them on people because you feel away, because it'll return to you if that force or negative energy is undeserving for the person that you're sending it to. Also, the power of forgiveness, no matter how hard it may be sometimes. Etan's redemption only came when he embraced forgiveness and sought to make amends. Also, the spirit of Christmas, even though everyone may not celebrate, the story reinforces the holiday themes of love, generosity, and community. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Let me know what takeaways you took from this story. Have you ever been a Paul or an Etan? Share your stories down below. But like I always say, as above so below, as within so without, as the universe so the soul. Until next time, you guys, Ashe, baby.